In this screencast, I'm going to show you how to get started developing with Windows Azure. To build your first Windows Azure application, you will first need to set up your development environment. This will require you to be running either Windows Vista or Windows Server 2008 with the latest service packs installed. You'll need to have IIS 7 enabled with ASP.NET and Windows Communication Foundation HTTP activation, and you'll need to be running Visual Studio 2008 or Visual Web Developer Express. Now, regardless of which development tool you choose, you'll need to have the .NET Framework 3.5 Service Pack 1 installed, but that comes automatically with the Service Pack for Visual Studio or Visual Web Developer. Finally, you'll need SQL Server 2005 Express or 2008. Once you have the prerequisites taken care of, you'll need the Windows Azure specific tools. Simply navigate to Microsoft.com/Azure. And you'll find yourself at the main landing page for the Azure Services platform. In the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a link to Try It Now. This is the quickest way to get going because it takes us right to a page with links to the various SDKs. Now, for Windows Azure development, we only need to worry about the first two links here, the Windows Azure SDK and the Windows Azure tools for Microsoft Visual Studio. The Windows Azure SDK provides the cloud on your desktop that allows you to build and run applications on your local machine just as if they were running in the cloud. The Windows Azure tools for Microsoft Visual Studio provides the templates that simplify the process of developing a Windows Azure application. In this screencast, I'm going to walk you through the basic steps necessary to deploy a Windows Azure application. The first thing you need to get familiar with is the Azure Services Developer Portal, which is provided by Microsoft as a means for you to upload, monitor, and maintain your Windows Azure and Live Framework projects. So I'm going to navigate to https://lx.azure.microsoft.com. I'm going to need to log in, of course, so I'll use my Windows Live ID to do so. You can see that at this point I have no projects. The Summary tab shows all of the projects I've created, and of course with none, all it does is offer me some suggestions on how to get started. The Analytics tab provides storage and usage information. Again, I'm not going to have any analytics at this point because I don't have any projects to generate analytics. Finally, the Accounts tab allows you to manage tokens and live alerts. This is where you'll go when you first obtain your token. Now, the Azure Services Platform supports different project types. Let's go back to the Summary view and select New Project. When you click on the New Project link, the Developer Portal will display what type of projects you can create, and this is based on your tokens. Now, Windows Azure offers compute and storage in the cloud. With regards to the project types, Hosted Service represents the compute part, and perhaps not surprisingly, Storage Account represents storage. We would need to create a storage account if our application needed to store data in blobs or tables, or if we wanted to use Windows Azure storage queues for web worker role communication. Our application does none of those things, so we can skip right to Hosted Service. Now, each cloud application will have a label and a description along with a unique DNS name. I'm going to go ahead and label this as ITM Demo for deployment, and click Next. And for our unique DNS name, I'm going to supply ITM Demo and check its availability. It's available. I'm going to go ahead and create the project. At this point, we have an empty project into which we can deploy a Windows Azure application. Now, to make deployment a little bit easier, I'm going to go ahead and copy down the application ID. The application ID is simply a unique value that's been given to each project. So now let's open up Visual Web Developer Express, and we have a cloud service that's already been built and it's been tested in the development fabric. Now, since the cloud service template is aware of the developer portal, I can go to the properties and go to the portal tab and go ahead and add that application ID in there. That's going to streamline the deployment process just a little bit. Now I'll right-click the cloud application in Solution Explorer and select Publish. As long as the publish action is successful, it's going to take us right into the development portal into the appropriate page, thanks to the application ID. It also is going to open up a Windows Explorer window where we can see the results of the build process, a package file and a configuration file. The package file is really just a zip file that contains the project's components, and really its format is not at all unlike the OpenXML format used by Office 2007. The configuration file is the service model definition that's going to be used by the Fabric controller to determine what roles you have and how many instances of each to create. Let's go ahead and copy this directory from Windows Explorer so we can use it when we upload our file. Over here, we've noticed that Visual Studio has opened up our project for us, and we can go ahead and select Deploy. When we select Deploy, it's going to prompt us for the package file and the configuration file that we upload from local storage. We simply select Browse, navigate to the location we expect, upload the package, and upload the configuration. We give it a label, perhaps version 1, and click on Deploy. It uploads the file, which never takes very long, depending on the size of the application, and then it begins the deploy process. This can take some time, usually several minutes at least. Now, once the deployment process has completed, we're not actually able to test it quite yet. Notice that the product or project has been moved into staging and the web role has been allocated, but it's not actually running yet. So we'll go ahead and click on the Run button to start the application. This also could take a minute or two. And while we're waiting for it to get started, I want to point out that it's generated a URL that looks a little strange. Now, this is actually a public URL. It just doesn't look very friendly because it's built using a GUID. Now, we can't go there yet because, again, we haven't received confirmation that our web role has started. When we move our application from staging into production, then we'll get a more straightforward URL to use, or we can map a DNS name that we already own. Now that it's started, we can go ahead and click on this website URL, and it should take us out to the guid.cloudapp.net/default.aspx, and shortly we should see our application deployed. Now, what if we want to take this and move it from staging into production? Well, let's go ahead and close this and go back to the management interface. Let's go ahead and click on this single button. That's going to promote the application to the production deployment. We'll click OK. And now we have a website URL of itmdemo.cloudapp.net. I can click on that, and there it is with a nice friendly URL. And in just a few minutes, we've been able to move our application from development up into staging and then into production. And in just a few minutes, we've managed to deploy our first Windows Azure application.